What's going on, you guys? You're tuned into the Cutting Room Knife Review. I'm your host, Garrett, and today we have an episode that I've been looking forward to doing since I started this channel. This is the first episode of Grail Quest. What's up, guys? I'm Garrett. You're tuned into the Cutting Room Knife Review, where I review knives, blades, and all things sharp. Please like and subscribe so I can keep bringing you more killer knife content. Now, Grail Quest is going to be a video series that I take you through basically the opposite of budget bangers. I take you through the knives that are at the top, the upper echelon of knife collecting, the most famous knives, the hardest to procure knives, some of the most expensive knives that we have on the market. Now, if you don't know what a Grail knife is, really, a Grail knife is different for every single person. But to me, what a Grail knife means is the ultimate upper echelon, the tip top, the Mount Everest of knives for whatever your collection is. What makes you as a collector just beam, just the happiest you could be, just the most content, the knife that, completes your collection, that sits at the top of the top shelf for you. And while there's always going to be probably one knife that does that, there doesn't just have to be one Grail knife for you or anyone. And a Grail knife can be anything. It doesn't have to be the most expensive knife. It doesn't have to be the most hard to get knife. It has to be the most special knife to you. I like that example or that definition of it. The most special knife to you should be your Grail knife. And you can have more than one. Many of these knives that I'm going to show you in this series are considered Grail knives by many people. All the knives that you see in front of you, most collectors that are in the know would consider these all to be Grail quality knives. Now, most people don't just go out and get Grail quality knives when they start collecting. Most of the time it takes time. It always takes money. And a lot of times it takes some hunting to find these knives and to procure the one that's right for you. Because oftentimes your Grail isn't just the model of knife, but it's a specific version of that model or a specific color of that model or the blade type of that model. And there's just so much that could be a Grail knife. It really could be anything, like I said, but typically I'm going to go through the ones that are considered by most collectors to be Grail quality knives. And ultimately it's going to be what I am considering a Grail quality knife. Now, I'm going to go through with you over these episodes and show you what's in my collection. And if you have a knife that you'd like to check out or you'd like to let me borrow to review for this collection of videos on Grail knives, if you'd like to see a specific model on Grail Quest, by all means, please leave a comment. Let me know what you'd like to see, and I'll do my best to either borrow it or maybe buy it and put it on the show. And likely I might just have it because I have a pretty good collection of Grail knives that I've been growing over the time I've been collecting. Now, most of the time when we start collecting, something that's a good knife, but probably a more budget knife, like say a Civivi. And we find a Civivi model that we love, and then we start researching knives. I know that's what I did. I started looking at nicer knives. And to tell you the truth, the first knife that I ever really started with was a Spyderco Para 3. So I kind of skipped the very budget realm of knives, and I started in with Spydercos. And then maybe you take your Spyderco and you modify it with new scales and a clip, or you've been checking out Spyderco for a while and they normally have G10 or FRN scales, and you say, oh, titanium is the way to go, and maybe I can get a better steel. So you look into like a super steel like Vanax, and you want to frame lock titanium that runs on bearings. And so you get this knife like the Padre, and that settles your quest for a while. And this very well could be somebody's grail. I've always called the Padre the quote unquote budget grail because this knife has so many qualities of it that other grail knives have. And I absolutely love this knife, but it comes in right around $300, which is usually not the case for most people's grail knives. But truth be told, this is an amazing knife. But the thing about it is anybody can get it. And one of the qualities of a grail knife that I think, or one of the qualities that makes a knife a grail knife, is that it's difficult to procure. Not just anybody can get it. You can't just go on Blade HQ or DLT or any of the other knife retailers and just buy your grail knife. You usually can't. Sometimes you can find knives. You can find a drop that you get lucky with, or just your grail knife just happens to be a production knife. But a lot of times they aren't production knives. A lot of times they're mid-tech knives or knives that you have to order direct from a manufacturer that aren't sold at retailers. And so you take a step up. And I remember the first real time I saw a knife that I couldn't get my own of. I saw the Custom Knife Factory Evo 4. And you can actually buy this at one particular knife store, but I sure didn't know about that knife store at the time. And they're very rarely able to be found in stock. Most of the time you have to pre-order these. But I just fell in love with this knife. And it's not the most expensive knife. It is expensive, and some people think it's overpriced because it's, essentially a Chinese knife that's then assembled in Russia by a Russian company. But it's just an amazingly beautiful knife. And it's a knife that I knew I had to have, and I had to start hunting for it. And it was not easy at the time to find this knife. So this became one of the first knives, one of the first that I would ever consider a grail that I started questing for. But this wasn't the first knife that I achieved in my quote unquote grail quest. Actually, the first grail knife that I ever got was a Chris Reeve Sabenza. And I've actually since let that knife go to a good friend of mine, and I'm happy that it's with him at his home. But after that, I found my one true number one grail knife, and that is the Craig Brown Cortex XL. And this knife is, by all means, a grail knife. It's many people's grail knife, and I am a person that it is the grail knife of. This is my grail knife. I don't think that was some very good English in that last sentence, but forgive me. I'm kind of reveling in these knives. I haven't gotten to bring out my favorite knives for you guys yet. I'm really enjoying this. But this Craig Brown knife, you have to order directly from Craig Brown or buy on the secondhand market. I ordered this knife directly from Craig Brown, but that takes getting on a mailing list and waiting and finding your spot when he does open the list, and then ordering this knife and waiting for it. And when it comes down to it, this is probably my number one out of all these knives. But it's not the knife we're going to talk about today. We're going to save this knife for another day. There's many other grail knives that you might check out. There is the Rob Johnson Cedar. This is another amazing knife. This one hails all the way from Eastern Europe. And like many other grail knives, you have amazing milling on it. You have an amazing blade. This one has step milling on the blade, which is a little hard to show you on video, but if you look at it, it's actually got a milled blade where there's tiny little steps that go down the grind. It's not a grind, it's actually a milled blade. Most of these knives have amazing action that other knives just simply don't compare to, such as the Grimsmo Rask. This knife is known for having some of the best action of any knife in the world. especially on its drop. As you see, it has no bounce in its drop. It's got what they call a guillotine shut on it. And I ordered this knife direct from Grimsmo. Now, Grimsmo is a little easier to get a hold of and to get them to make you a knife, but it's still an expensive, hard to achieve, hard to find knife. We have the Craig Brown Mini FSD, and a lot of times grill knives might be knives that are no longer in production, like this knife. Craig Brown is no longer making this knife, so it's going to be ultimately much harder to find this knife. So your grill knife might be something like a Spyderco Nirvana that maybe wasn't always a grill knife, or maybe it was, but it's no longer made, so it's even harder to get your hands on the knife. Or it could be a production knife that they just don't make very much production of, like the Demco Whale Shark, the Compact AD20. This is technically a production knife, but it's a knife that doesn't go into production very much, and they don't sell a whole lot of models of. There aren't too many of these out just in the wild, like there are, let's say, like an AD20S, or even more so an AD20.5. So sometimes you might wind up with like a production model being your grail, but it's going to be a production model that's especially hard to find. Or it could just be, a model that isn't sold in stores. You have to order direct from the maker, like this Prince Protean or this HMC Transient. Now, these are available. You can get your hands on these when the maker opens their books. And if you have the money, you can usually, and a little bit of patience, you can usually get your hands on these. They're amazing knives. They're certainly grail knives. Or finally, there's knives like the Oz Manufacturing Roosevelt, which is probably my other top tier. If it's not the Cortex XL, it's this knife. That's a grail knife for number one. This battles with the Cortex XL, in my opinion, for number one. This knife is especially hard to get your hands on because it's not very rarely is directly sold. Most of the time, to get a brand new Rosie, you have to enter a lottery and get your name drawn just for the opportunity to buy one of these. And then you get to buy a model that your name got drawn for, and not particularly a model that you get to choose. Or you have to be like me and find one of these on the secondhand market and beg, borrow, trade. I ended up trading a knife I absolutely loved to get my hands on this knife because I knew it was a machine-wise Sonora that I would be able to get it again. And it's a very expensive production knife, but I knew that I could buy a Sonora again. And it was going to be very hard to ever come across this Zero-blasted Vanax Rosie ever again. So there's different reasons and different whys that make up your grail knife and why it is your grail knife and how you might quest for that grail knife. But today we're not talking about any of these knives. Nope, I've decided that the start of my grail quest, my first episode that I'm going to go over, is going to be the knife that I quested the hardest for. And that knife is the REK Shaman Reblade. Now this knife, when I found this knife, you guys, I remember seeing it, and I remember somebody calling it a shaman, and I went, what in the heck? That's not a shaman. Like, this is a shaman. Like, I knew what this knife was. Like, what on earth is this thing? Like, looks cool. I don't think I like it better than the other shaman. Like, what on earth is that? And then I asked enough questions, and somebody said, oh, that's, REK Knives Shaman Reblade. And I looked it up, and I looked at the price, and I said, holy crap. Well, it looks like I'm never getting one of these. But this knife stuck in my head and I couldn't get this knife out of my head. I had to have this knife. There was just no avoiding it. I needed it. There was no getting around it. Like, I decided that this was a knife that was going to be in my collection, before before I was dead, and sooner rather than later. And so I did my research. I talked to people on Reddit. I talked to people who owned their versions of this knife, and I figured out how to get on the list, how to what I needed to do once I got on that list to get this knife, and everything that it entails to finally finishing my quest for the REK Shaman Reblade. So let's go over the measurements and specifications of the REK Shaman Reblade. And since this is not a production knife, we're going to have to measure this ourselves. So we have about a little bit under 8.5 inches overall. The blade length is a little bit over 3.5, about 3 3/4 inches on the blade. And then we have just under 5 inches, about 4 3/4 inches on the body. It's a little bit under 1/2 inch thick. Now, what this knife really is you start with a Spyderco Shaman, okay? And if once you've gotten in touch with Josh at REK, who, let me say, is the most awesome down-to-earth knife maker. He does such a great job, but he's also a really cool individual who works with his customers and just really treats all the people that he makes blades and knives for like they're his family. And I can't say enough good things about Josh. I just got to put that in there. Not all knife makers are as personable as he is, and it's really a testament to how cool of a dude he is, the way he treats his customers and the way he interacts and just takes the time to do right by them. And his knives aren't cheap, they aren't, but he has the right kind of customer service to go along with the kind of prices that he charges. And I think that the product that he delivers is worth every bit of the price that it costs. But once you get yourself in touch with Josh and you get yourself put on the books, and the way that you do that is you get put on his mailing list, and he'll let everybody know he's opening up his books, and there'll be so many spots for this many reblades. And if you go and you buy one of those reblades, you're then given a spot. And what happens is you'll send in a donor shaman knife. So before this knife that I have right here, I had a Spyderco CTS XHP Shaman. And I sent that to Josh at REK Knives. What he does is he disassembles that knife and he takes out the internals from it. He takes out the liner, the hardware, and the locking mechanism, and the pivot, and the washers, etc. And he gives you back your scales and your blade, all the stuff that he doesn't use, you get back. And what he does is he grinds you a blade. He takes a blade and he grinds it out and he fits it to the scales that you had, or not the scales, the liner and the locking mechanism and the pivot that you donated from your shaman. And then you have an option to use different varieties of scales that you can put on this now newly rebladed shaman. And I went with Aramis Ahkmedov scales. It's a Russian scale company, and I think it's just one of the best looking custom scales in the world. I think it's the best. Both of these two knives have Aramis Ahkmedov scales on them. Basically, it's carbon fiber and twill that's mixed together, and as you can see, there's actually like notches milled into this model. This one's a bit more like kind of a wood grain pattern to it, and they do a really nice backspacer in all their knives. And as you can see, these are just two different versions of his scales, but ultimately it's the same manufacturing, same quality of the scales. So what we have here is Aramis Ahkmedov scales, and this is in the black purple color. I used a Lynch Northwest deep carry clip that I will eventually be switching out with an REK clip like this. There were just currently none in stock when I made this knife. And we have here is a custom ground Reblade in Vanax Superclean. And this blade is just absolutely spectacular. If you look at it, it's a front flipper. It has some of the most amazing action, some of the best blade geometry and weight out of any knife that I've ever held in my life. It's fairly lightweight, but it feels robust and solid. And just the cutting geometry, the blade geometry, the cutting angles that you have on this knife, the hollow grind that REK Josh has put on it. It's just magnificent. Where the finger hole is cut out and the shape of it is just so perfect for reverse flicking. It's a really good shape where you can get your index finger into it, you can get your middle finger into it, you can get your thumb into it just fine. And it looks really good on the blade. It kind of looks like the eye of a bird. Kind of looks like a bird's beak and looks like an eye of it. As you can see, we have this amazing satin finish hollow ground blade. It's hard to see. It's hard for me to get far enough away. But if you look at this knife up close, it is just an immaculate job that he did on this grind. It has this amazing, grind up here, up on the spine of the knife. The compound grind on this is just, the grind up here is just absolutely amazing. It looks so good looking down at it from the top. The flats are also brushed satin. If you look, the flats go sideways. If you look at the grind, the lines go vertical. It gives it almost a two-tone kind of look to it, and it is absolutely outstanding. Now, really, this knife is simply a different knife than this is. It's the same knife, but it's a different knife. Now, the way I'd like to explain it is you have a race car, but it's like a NASCAR or a stock car, where you take a car that's a street car, you take a knife that's a production knife, and you're reblading it and rescaling it into essentially a different knife, but it's still got the soul, it's still got the skeleton of the Shaman. And people get really salty over this. They say, you can't call this a Shaman. This isn't a Shaman anymore. This isn't a Spyderco Shaman. And it's an REK Shaman Reblade is what it is. But it has the internals of a Shaman on it. And it's basically like if you took a production car and you tore the old motor out, the original motor out, and you tore the suspension out, you tore the seats out, and you gutted it, and you made it into a race car with a souped up engine and, race seats and lightweight carbon fiber this and that and everything. You have a much lighter knife. You have a much better blade angle and blade geometry in this knife. You have a hollow, just beautiful hollow grind. You have a superior blade steel to this one. You have nicer scales than this knife. It is a little bit less clunky than it, but truly you have the same locking mechanism. You have ultimately a pretty similar feel in the hands, but you just have a superior knife. a much superior knife. And do you pay for it? Yeah, you definitely do pay for it. Is it worth it? It is totally worth it, in my opinion. But it took me months. It took me months and months and months to get my hands on this knife. And was it worth it? It certainly was. The REK Shaman. What we have here is a knife that is incredibly comfortable in the hand. We have really nice jimping up here on the spine. I like the choke up on this knife and have my index finger up in this finger trail right here, but we can hold it further back, and it's actually really comfortable still with the blade out in the back position of the knife. But I'm normally choked up on it. Thumb on the jimping. It has a really amazing blade angle. It has just enough belly in this Wharncliffe, he calls it. It's kind of like a sheep's foot Wharncliffe, reverse Tonto. It's just kind of its own shape. That it just does a bang up job of cutting just about everything. If you need someone to slice, this is an amazing knife. It just feels so comfortable in my hands. And one of the things that's really unique about this knife is that it's running on washers, and not a whole lot of grill knives wind up running on washers. Because it has essentially the action of a shaman, but it's got a new blade, you have new scales, and Josh at REK really takes his time to tune this knife, and it just comes back to you as like a Spyderco on steroids. You know, Spydercos are known for having amazing action for uh, washer ran knives running on washers, and when this knife comes back, it's just really, really awesome. It has enough of a resistance to it, kind of a hydraulic resistance, that it doesn't just snap out crazy. It has a swing out to it. It really has a different feel to it, whether you're using your thumb to open it up, you run the front flipper to open it up, you do a flick with your index finger, or if you do a flick with your middle finger. As I just fail on one of them. But that's really just user error on my part. It has a different feel to that middle finger flick than it does to this index finger flick, or a thumb flick, or a rollover with the front flipper. I use this knife for just about everything. And it is essentially a knife that I hold in one of the highest regards out of any of my knives. Um, it's interesting because it's kind of not a production knife. It was hard to get my hands on it because it's a limited, you know, it's a reblade that Josh has limited quantities of. When he opened the books for this knife, there were only 12 openings for reblades. And I believe that there's 4 in Vanax and 8 in S90V. And it's just a kind of a small club. And it's a club that's growing as Josh gets more popular and more people find out about him. But it's a relatively small club that we are in, that those of us that own these REK knives. And that's kind of a thing about the Grail Quest, is that you become part of these kind of exclusive clubs of people that own these amazing knives. And that might sound snobby, but it's not. It's just it's a feeling of achievement. It's a feeling of just success and having, found and achieved and, saved the money and, taken the time to get yourself, a true masterpiece like this. And I love it because it's unique. It's unlike any of my other grails. All my other grails were basically put together as a knife that was built to be that knife. And this is kind of a grail that somebody took, another knife and they modified it into something that is a completely different knife. Um, you know, think of, an SHO Cobra, where it's like, yeah, it's a Mustang Cobra, but they've done so much work to it that now it's almost a whole different car. It's just a really cool, unique experience. And I hope that, if you do want to get yourself one of these, that you take the time to go out and do it, because it is well worth the trouble of getting yourself one. So that is the REK Shaman in a nutshell. It is an amazing reblade of a classic Spyderco. It is essentially one of the most perfect knives for me. It has a grind on it that is ultimately spectacular. It has action on it that is ultimately spectacular. It has a look to it that I think is just absolutely gorgeous. It has aesthetics to it that just melt into my hand and feel unlike any other knife. I love how it's thickest right here through the pistol grip, and then it has a choil for your middle finger, and then it gets thick again back for your back finger. So the thinnest part of the knife is through the middle finger, and the thickest part of the knife is through your index finger, and then you have the middle part being the back two fingers. And you just have so much control. It's so locked into your hand. It's just amazing. Everything from the finger hole to the finger choils to the jimping to the hollow grind, and the shape of the blade and the geometry of the edge was just thought out and just perfectly executed. That's what I will say about this knife. It is perfectly executed. So that's it for this knife so far. And I look forward to going over other grails with you guys in the future. But this is in the top 3 knives for me. I'd have a hard time putting those 3 knives in 1, 2, and 3. But this is one of the top 3 knives for me. And I just want to say thank you to Josh. Thank you for making this knife for me. Thank you for being a good friend. And thank you for just working with me so I could get this into my hands. This is the masterpiece that is the REK Shaman Reblade. I'm Garrett for the Cutting Room Knife Review. Until next time, you guys, stay sharp.